The Americans with Disabilities Act, or ADA, is a civil rights law that prohibits discrimination against individuals with disabilities in all areas of public life, including jobs, schools, transportation, and all public and private places that are open to the general public. The purpose of the law is to make sure that people with disabilities have the same rights and opportunities as everyone else. According to the Society for Human Resource Management, the Americans with Disabilities Act prohibits employers from using disability as a basis for discriminating against qualified individuals. A qualified employee or applicant with a disability is an individual who, with or without reasonable accommodation, can perform the essential functions of the job. The ADA applies to employers with 15 or more employees and is enforced by the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. So let's define a disability. Not everyone with a medical condition is protected by the law. In order to be protected, a person must be qualified for the job and have a disability as defined by the law. A person can show that he or she has a disability in one of three ways. A person may be disabled if he or she has a physical or mental condition that substantially limits a major life activity, such as walking, talking, seeing, hearing, or learning. A person may be disabled if he or she has a history of a disability, such as cancer, that's in remission. And finally, a person may be considered disabled if he or she is believed to have a physical or mental impairment that is not transitory, lasting, or expected to last 6 months or less, and minor, even if it does not have such an impairment. Title I of the Act is designed to help people with disabilities access the same employment opportunities and benefits available to people without. Employers must provide reasonable accommodation to qualified applicants or employees, unless doing so would cause significant difficulty or expense for the employer. A reasonable accommodation is any change or adjustment to a job or work environment that will enable an applicant or employee with a disability to participate in the application process or perform the essential job functions. The law requires an employer to provide reasonable accommodation to an employee or job applicant with a disability unless doing so would cause significant difficulty or expense for the employer. This is known as an undue hardship. An employer doesn't have to provide an accommodation if doing so would cause undue hardship to the employer. Undue hardship means that the accommodation would be too difficult or too expensive to provide in light of the employer's size, financial resources, and the needs of the business. An employer may not refuse to provide an accommodation just because it involves some cost. An employer does not have to provide the exact accommodation the employee or applicant wants. According to the EEOC, disability discrimination occurs when an employer or other entity covered by the Act treats a qualified individual with a disability who is an employee or applicant unfavorably because she has a disability. The law forbids discrimination when it comes to any aspect of employment, including hiring, firing, pay, job assignments, promotions, layoff, training, fringe benefits, and any other term or condition of employment. The law also protects people from discrimination based on their relationship with a person with a disability. For example, it's illegal to discriminate against an employee because her husband has a disability. It's illegal to harass an applicant or employee because he or she has a disability, had a disability in the past, or is believed to have a physical or mental impairment that's not transitory and minor. Harassment can include, for example, offensive remarks about a person's disability. The purpose of an interactive process is to determine what, if any, accommodation should be provided to an employee. The ultimate determination about reasonable accommodations to be provided is up to the employer. The employee can refuse or accept an offered accommodation. During the interactive process, the employer may ask the worker relevant questions that will enable it to make an informed decision about the request. This includes asking for information about the desired accommodation, the nature of the problem prompting the request, and how the employee believes that his disability has created the need for accommodation. The employee is also required to participate in the interactive process. Although the individual with disability is not required to identify the exact accommodation necessary, the employee does need to describe the work-related problem he or she is having and why he or she believes it's related to a disability.